Not every threat in this show comes from a curse, a monster, or the world itself turning hostile. Sometimes the threat is just other people, the ones you trusted, the ones who won't take no for an answer, the ones who decide you're simply not good enough to keep around. A pair of con artists who exploit Muriel's kindness to rob her blind. A suitor who can't accept the word no and tries to take what he wants anyway. And a robot who makes Courage watch in real time as the family he loves decides someone else might simply be better. This is a deep dive into social fear, not monsters, not curses, but the people around you becoming the threat, and how Courage the Cowardly Dog explores what happens when trust, boundaries, and belonging all come from other people who don't always deserve them. Before getting into the episodes, it's worth being precise about what makes this fear distinct. Social fear is the fear arising from other people, social relationships, rejection, judgment, humiliation, manipulation, conflict, or the pressure to conform. It's the anxiety of interacting with others or being vulnerable inside a social environment. In social fear, other people are the source of the threat. That fear takes a few different shapes across the series. Sometimes it's manipulation and deception, someone using your trust against you. Sometimes it's a relationship that refuses to accept rejection, turning affection into control. And sometimes it's the quieter, more personal fear of being judged inferior and replaced, watching your own place in someone's life get handed to somebody else. Start here, because this is the clearest, most direct expression of the fear. People who deliberately exploit trust for their own gain, with no supernatural excuse at all. Just two con artists and a woman who assumes the best in everyone. Muriel Meets Her Match. Manipulation and betrayal. Maria and Mono Ladronas aren't monsters in disguise. They're fugitives who correctly identify Muriel as an easy target, kind, trusting, eager to welcome a new neighbor, and methodically exploit exactly those qualities. Maria doesn't threaten Muriel into handing over her documents. She simply asks, over tea, in the tone of a new friend, and Muriel gives up the combination without a second thought. That's the specific horror of this kind of social fear. The danger isn't hidden behind a mask. It's hidden behind exactly the behaviors that are supposed to signal safety. A new neighbor, a shared makeover, a friendly chat. Courage can see through it immediately. But he's a dog nobody can understand, which means the one character equipped to recognize the manipulation is also the one least able to stop it through normal means. And notice how far the betrayal goes. Not just theft, but Muriel framed for the crime, blinded, and nearly arrested for something done to her, not by her. Trust exploited this thoroughly doesn't just cost you property. It briefly costs you your own credibility, turning you into the story's suspect instead of its victim. Now the fear changes shape. The Ladrones wanted Muriel's belongings and were gone the moment they had them. This threat wants Muriel herself and doesn't accept that her answer is his to lose. Goose God. Controlling relationships. The Goose God's courtship starts in a register the show plays as genuinely charming. Flowers, poetry, an elaborate feast. Muriel is flattered, which is a human, understandable response, but she's also completely clear about her answer. More than once. Her place is with Eustace, and she kindly, firmly declines. That clarity is what makes what follows a genuine social fear rather than a simple monster reveal. The Goose God doesn't mishear her. He simply decides her answer doesn't apply to him. When charm fails to change her mind, he moves straight to attempting to kidnap her, treating persistent romantic interest as though it earns him a claim on her, regardless of what she's actually said. This is social fear at its most uncomfortable, because it wears the language of love while behaving like ownership. And the episode resolves it almost as a joke. The Goose God settles for Eustace's truck instead. But that punchline doesn't erase what came immediately before it. Someone with real power decided a clearly stated no was simply an obstacle to route around, not a boundary to respect. Finally, the fear turns inward, away from strangers and unwanted suitors, towards something quieter and arguably more painful. Watching the people who are supposed to love you decide, without ever saying so out loud, that someone else might simply be better. Courage versus Mecha-Courage, rejection and replacement. D-Lung doesn't hide his judgment. He calls courage no good to his face and builds Mecha-Courage specifically to prove a better version is possible. But the real social fear in this episode isn't D-Lung's insult. It's what happens next. Muriel and Eustace, the two people whose acceptance actually matters to Courage, simply failing to notice the swap at all. Every scene that follows twists the knife a little further. Mecha-Courage gets the praise, the pats, the lap time with Muriel that the real Courage never receives. This is rejection without confrontation. Nobody tells Courage he's been replaced. He simply has to watch it happen in his own home from the outside and notice what actually resolves it. Not Muriel or Eustace realizing their mistake, but Courage physically proving himself in combat, far away from the people whose acceptance started the whole crisis. Even his victory doesn't undo the core fear. It just delays the next time someone might decide a better version is worth considering, which the final scene confirms is already happening again with the Techno Dog commercial. Step back and look at what these 3 episodes actually build, in order, rather than as 3 disconnected examples. First, manipulation and betrayal. Strangers who exploit trust for material gain, then disappear. Then, a controlling relationship. Someone closer, claiming affection, who refuses to accept rejection and tries to take control regardless. And finally, rejection and replacement. The people closest to you at all, quietly deciding someone else might simply be better, with no confrontation required. Notice the direction of that escalation. The threat gets closer with every episode. Strangers, then an unwanted suitor claiming a relationship, then the actual family whose love was supposed to be unconditional. Social fear across this video isn't about strangers in the dark. It's about how much danger can come from exactly the relationships you were supposed to be safest inside. Across these 3 episodes, the betrayal in Muriel Meets Her Match, the controlling courtship in Goose God, and the quiet replacement in Courage versus Mecha-Courage, Courage the Cowardly Dog keeps testing the same uncomfortable premise from different angles. None of these threats needed claws, curses, or supernatural power to be frightening. They only needed people willing to use trust, affection, or comparison as a weapon, and a small, watchful dog who kept noticing exactly when that line got crossed, even when nobody else around him did.